Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the show, Podcast Unfiltered. I'm so glad that you're here. The world recently marked 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, which is usually celebrated from late November to early December every year. The global event comes at a time Nigeria stands at a difficult intersection, one where insecurity and gender inequality collide, reinforcing each other in painful, measurable ways. From mass kidnappings to banditry, terrorism, forced displacement, sexual violence, and shrinking opportunities, women in Nigeria are not just victims of insecurity, they are pillars holding broken communities together. Sadly, their voices remain missing where decisions are made. At a time when insecurity is reshaping daily life across Nigeria, the National Assembly is debating one of the most consequential pieces of legislation in years, a bill proposing a mandatory quota for women in elective and appointive positions. The question is, will it pass? Will it shift and reshape Nigeria's democratic architecture? Joining me today on the show to speak to this issue is Dr. Mufuliat Fijabi, the Executive Director of the Sustainable Gender Action Initiative. The organization is a non-profit organization, non-governmental, that is committed to advancing issues of women empowerment, policy, and the good of women in general. Dr. Fijabi comes from a background of previous work with the United Nations Development Program. She's also worked on several European Union donor-funded projects and different other gender policy platforms in Nigeria. So today, she will help us to shed some light on the issue we have at hand. Dr. Fijabi, you are welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for making time. And, for the sake of others who are not very familiar with some of your work, both in Nigeria as well as in the region, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself? Over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm Mufuliat Fijabi. I'm a gender and development specialist. I have more than 2 decades of work experience working on gender issues at the Nigerian country level and globally. My areas of interest include women's leadership and political participation and advancing the discourse around ending sexual and gender-based violence. My background also is in communication. I've worked earlier in the print and electronic media. So I'm very, very much passionate about women's rights as part of human rights and the need to promote and advance the voices of women in decision-making positions. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I know you come with a very rich experience. I've also had the privilege of working with you in the past. So let's take it back to, the what I said in my intro, the recent celebration of the 16 days of activism. Specifically, within the context of Nigeria, what would you consider as some of the most significant successes that Nigeria has recorded in the area of tackling this issue of gender-based violence?
Okay, thank you very much for that very interesting question. When we talk about the areas that Nigeria has really made remarkable progress, I would say that in terms of laws against violence against persons, which of course also includes women, we've done well in that regard because today there is a Violence Against Person Prohibition Act, that is fully operational in the Federal Capital Territory of Nigeria, Abuja. And you also have this particular act being domesticated by almost all the 36 states of the country except Kano, that is yet to fully domesticate the VAP. So as we have VAP Act in the Federal Capital Territory, we have VAP laws in other states of the country. So that law remains a very strong reference point, a legal framework that guides and protects one from violence, whether in the public or in the private spaces. The law is also a reflection of Nigeria's commitment, to some of the international and regional instruments that it has committed itself to over the years. Some of it include the Beijing Platform for Action, Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, the Maputo Protocol, and of course, talking generally about the United Nations Declaration against Violence Against Women. So while this law is very good, there are still a lot of gaps that needs to be closed to ensure that truly the laws are effective. And one of the gaps that I would say is the lack of sufficient political will by the states adopting the back laws to actually ensure its implementation. It's one thing to have a law in place, it's another to ensure that the laws are fully implemented. So, in the aspect of implementation, I wouldn't say that Nigeria has done exceptionally well. There is need for more strengthening of the laws, there is need for adequate implementation, and there is need for continuous monitoring to ensure that the laws are truly operational. And there is a social advocacy around laws. There is also need to ensure that citizens know about these laws, and when they fall victim of violating or being violated, the law is left to take its due course. So, if I want to add to this particular bit, I would like to also speak about the space that the just concluded 16 days of activism, which starts from 25th of November of every year to 10th of December, which also coincides with the International Human Rights Day. It provided that platform for more advocacy to ensure that when we talk about gender-based violence, it's no longer a joke. It's something that, in addition to the extensive advocacy that goes around it, there's also need to ensure that the laws in place are adequately implemented, and where the laws are not strong enough, they are strengthened to ensure that we are protected from violence. And when you talk about gender-based violence, it affects women more. A recent statistics released by the National Demographic and Health Survey in 2024 shows that at least 30% of women aged between 15 and 49 that have ever been married have experienced one form of violence around physical, emotional, and sexual violence in their lifetime. This tells us that when we talk about violence, it's not something that happens in the space, it's something that is happening, and it's something that the National Demographic and Health Survey statistics also provides evidence for. So we cannot afford to say that gender-based violence is not real. It's a real violence. And for the 16 days of activism this year, it actually also focused on ending digital gender-based violence. It's actually quite traumatic to see that the violence that we have not succeeded in having zero tolerance to in the physical spaces have now moved on to the online spaces. And, a lot of women, girls have experienced violence physically and online, that makes it really quite difficult to have women's spaces protected and to have spaces that women can fully operate from
Yeah.
without being violated.
About the issue of online violence against women, one of the projects that we worked on, monitoring online violence against women, maybe during election in particular. So who are those who monitor these things, and how do they socialize the reports, the evidence that they gather from their online monitoring of violence against women? Some women suffer abuse, online. Some receive threats. If you are a woman politician, you are even much more exposed in that sense. So who are those monitoring those issues, and what becomes of, the data, the reports, the incidences that are recorded? Do we see any follow-up action happening in, beyond just reporting?
Yes. Let me say that Sustainable Gender Action Initiative, we also worked extensively around that. We've had series of training for digital ambassadors. We've also had opportunities to also have key institutions of government that work around this issue to participate in some of this capacity building. And if we look at the Nigerian context today, there's a cybercrime act which the police, of course, is in charge of. There's a National Agency for the Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons that, of course, houses the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act. And you also have other agencies of government, that respond swiftly to acts of online gender-based violence or digital violence. They have a series of entry points for people who are affected to actually make reports. And from our interactions with them, when Sustainable Gender Action Initiative organized that program as part of 16 days of activism about 2 years ago, there is evidence that when reports are made, there are prosecutions. But the challenge, however, is for those who are affected to be able to speak out about what they have experienced. Most times, survivors or victims don't have that self-confidence to speak about it. And that's why for the 2025 16 days of activism, a lot of advocacy was out there to build the confidence of survivors or victims who may be affected, and to encourage them to make a report. And you also have gaps in how individuals recognize or see early warning signs of gender-based violence. Some people are actually abused and threatened, and they don't even know that this is what they are going through. So the advocacy, to a great extent, helped people to shape their thoughts, to understand some of the experiences that they've been going through, and to have that self-confidence, the high esteem to speak out about the pains they go through online. So I would say that the information around online violence is not so much out there yet, but the effort that was put into it around this year's 16 days of activism has raised a lot of visibility about how different forms of gender-based violence online could actually affect human life. When you see instances of extortion, cyber stalking, image abuse, a lot of all of these abuses online that people are not used to, or they see they don't recognize, were actually brought to the limelight.
Yeah, thank you. And I will segue from this into discussing insecurity in Nigeria. But the insecurity situation in Nigeria, it does affect everyone. It does not affect everyone in equal measure. And I know in the course of your work, you must have done some work in the Northeast over the, responding to victims of Boko Haram attack, and perhaps in the Northwest and other parts of the country. So what do you see in terms of the impact of the current insecurity in the country, the kidnappings, the killings? And I should mention that uh, they've perhaps the number of women that have been kidnapped is even more than the number of men. You know, I'm not citing any statistical figure at this point. Recently, I mean, they went to Chibok, kidnapped, you know, over 200 young girls. They've also been to the school in Kebbi, kidnapped them in their numbers as well. What do you see on the impact of all of this on women, and in particular the girl child?
I would say that just yesterday I was at an event where the third National Action Plan on Peace and Security in Nigeria was launched at the State House, and the reflections, keep coming about the safety of women and girls in Nigeria amidst the existing challenges we have with security. I must say that it's not palatable to listen or see how women are exposed to all of these risks, all of these dangers, and all of these challenges, from denial of economic access to economic opportunities, to displacement, to sexual harassment, to sexual and gender-based violence. A lot is going on actually, especially in those areas. Even though the government has been trying its best to ensure that things are brought under control, but the pockets of attacks here and there, of course, means a lot. For the girl child who is being affected in schools, it's of course a traumatizing experience, and for women who are affected, it's also a huge challenge. So it's a situation that calls for all hands to be on deck, to address it so that we all have a stable country and we don't have challenges with the economic growth of the country. Of course, when you talk about the effects of security matters on the population as a whole is huge. Not to talk of those gaps in how women are treated and the experiences they go through.
Mhm.
This
Yeah.
is not an interesting thing. I've had instances of working as a consultant for UN Women Nigeria in the Northeast, and I know that a lot of women face a lot of challenges. Of course, most times when you have security issues, women who are not in the forefront of the war that are affected back home, and they also are challenged with a lot of difficulties, and of course, also dealing with the children while they are displaced makes their situation complex because of lack of access to basic needs, basic facilities, and their sustained economic disempowerment at that particular period in time. So when we talk about security and we look at what the UN says about the UN Resolution 1325, and which has also encouraged countries to have their own national action plans around the Resolution 1325, one would see that the efforts are there, that deliberate steps to make things happen to ensure that some steps are adequately taken care of, but the speed needs to be faster than we all think of, because while the plans are being implemented, human lives are being affected. So we cannot but continue to call on everyone to give peace a chance and to have faith in our being together as a country, and to also ensure that no human being suffers or is affected because of acts of security
Yeah.
by one group or the other.
Or the other. Yeah. So I think the follow-up question I would like to ask to this is, beyond the direct violence, you spoke in the course of this interview about, online violence against women and girls, and if you put that within the context of violence that it may not, I mean, subtle and indirect issues of insecurity. How are those increasing vulnerability for women? For example, issues of displacement, the loss of livelihood for these women. Of course, I think we're seeing increased child marriage, rates in the country. So, how can these issues be addressed?
Okay, so because we have a national action plan in place now, I think one way to help out is to ensure that women and girls that are affected during this crisis, during this displacement, are directly targeted, to provide for them their immediate needs and to also expedite actions for their resettlement. When you look at the girl child who, because of displacement of security threats, is not able to go to school again, of course, her future will be affected. She's already been disempowered from childhood. So our situation needs to be taken care of with all urgency and seriousness. So I'm looking at a situation whereby if those children are in the displacement camps, adequate attention is given to their education pending when they are resettled. And for the women, some of them live in poverty already. Some of them are also affected, in terms of the access to the minimal economic resources that they have, that they built over the years. So this, when it happens, they no longer have access to it. So some kinds of relief that should be given to them should be targeted to make sure that they live above those challenges. So it's not a situation of taking food to them all the time. Of course, food is important, but
Mm,
their economic survival that will be sustainable should also be targeted. If it's not
mhm,
sustainable, it's like making the women become more vulnerable, making the girls become more vulnerable. And I must say that it's not just women and girls that are affected. We also have boys who become exposed to all kinds of crimes, and they are also part of the future of this country. So they need to be catered for. Most times, the men, even when they are displaced, they stay in the displacement camp maybe temporarily. They are able to go out to fend for themselves, unlike the women.
mm,
So perhaps baselines could be conducted immediately based on past experiences also, and the information gathered should be used to design realistic intervention support, for these people. And when we talk about displacement also, it's not all the displaced people are displaced Nigerians that are in the camps. Some people are with neighbors, with family friends, with extended family members, but they are not where they are used to, their places of abode. So, in targeting people who have been displaced as a result of security issues, it's not just those that are in the camps. There are others who are also not resident within the camps that need to be. There should be some kind of tracking and data collection process to ensure that the support, the relief that comes from government actually reach the right people and at the right time.
mm. Yeah, thank you so much. And one issue which I know we don't really talk so much about in Nigeria is this issue of mental health and how this is also impacting on people from these different communities. Yeah, in terms of resilience or coping mechanisms, what has been your experience in your interaction with women, in different communities, and even through your work with a sustainable gender action initiative? What are some of
Okay, mental health is very important, and unlike before, people now talk about mental health, that there's need for people to, to understand the fact that apart from the security challenges, economic issues, power outage, just like we mentioned, there's need for people to also live above challenges in their personal lives. So what I've seen women do, even organizations, is to organize retreats whereby people take some time off work, to relax, to have reflections, and to look at those SWOT analysis in their lives, personally, in their career, things that are working, things that are not working, and to also understand the fact that those things that are not within their control, they have to learn to accept that it's beyond their control. And if there is no immediate cause, it's not enough reason why they should retrogress in their mental alertness and their mental well-being. So when I work with women in the Northeast, um, a lot of the times the women are afraid, they are traumatized, and the coping mechanism that they often use is to form themselves into groups, have regular meetings where they talk, they chat, they have reflections about life, they provide support mechanisms to one another, you know. Having somebody to speak to is also one
Yeah,
strong form of
very
mental
important.
healing,
Yeah.
to see somebody as one you can confide in. The women served as confidants to one another, to ensure that they're able to relieve the burden of pain, stress, trauma, and all of that. A lot of women do exercises also, just like men, just to relieve themselves. Some listen to music,
Music.
some are also online taking classes on mental health, well-being. Some also change to becoming more attentive to their health, eating nutritious meal instead of meals
Just
that are
anything.
good but not nutritious to the body. So there are lots of coping mechanisms.
Thank you. So let's move on to the Women Quota Bill, which
Mm.
is before the National Assembly, right? One of the, leading advocates for the passage of that bill. So can you just tell us, very briefly, what are the core mechanisms of that bill? What does the bill propose?
Okay. So the reserved seat bill is what I would say a continuation of the advocacy on the additional bill in the ninth assembly. So with the 10th assembly is the reserved seat bill, which means legislative seats that women only can contest for at the National Assembly, for House of Representatives, and for the Senate and the state houses of assembly. So what this means is that in addition to women having opportunity to contest for other seats from the state level, the reserve seat will be there for women to contest for. And when they win, on the kind of, it's something that would advance the presence of women in those legislative houses, whether at the state house of assembly or at the level of the National Assembly. Currently, the percentage of women at the National Assembly is less than 5%. And in Nigeria today, we have some state houses of assembly where there are no female legislative representatives. This means that where decisions have to be made relating to women, for example, the Committee on Women will be made up of all men in those states, houses of assembly where you have no female representation in terms of the legislature. So the reserve seat bill will give an opportunity, not to have such happen again if the bill passes and becomes an act of parliament. What that means is that no matter how bad it is, there will be no state house of assembly in Nigeria where women would not be, because the reserved seat would have provided an opportunity for at least women in that particular state to have contested and won their seats.
Specifically, is there a number that the bill is advocating for, say, in the Senate and in the House of Representatives? And then, I mean, I'm all for that bill, but I also know that one major criticism of the governance architecture in Nigeria is that there are just too many people, that the few people that is taking so much from the cost of governance. That's what I'm headed for. Now, the National Assembly as it is, or as it stands, there are arguments for and against whether we need, a bicameral legislature. Now, if we add this number to the number of seats that we currently have both in the House as well as in the Senate, how do we get over that particular concern that we will be increasing the cost of governance? Or is the bill requesting that, okay, maybe out of the, I think it's 109 in the Senate, right? And 369 or thereabouts in the House of Reps. So are we asking that a quota of those seats be given to women, or we're adding seats on top of what we're already complaining is too many?
Asking for all the seats at the National Assembly. The seats are additional. And let me use the Senate as an example. If Lagos State, if the bill becomes an act of parliament, for Lagos State, for example, there are 3 senatorial districts. So only 1 seat is being created as reserved for women. So if the seat is contested for and 1 person from the senatorial seat 1 wins this time around, at another election, it will be the turn of senatorial district 2, then senatorial district 3. So at that state level, it's going to be rotated. That means that at any point in an election time, we would have a minimum of 36 senators come to the National Assembly, to the Senate. That's 36 seats that are being requested for. And what people are arguing about is that it's too much. Why would we be having more seats for women? But we've seen that countries globally that have adopted this have gone far ahead in terms of the kind of legislations they make, in terms of the kind of political process that they are engaged in. If those 36 states for the Senate would be what we need to do to have a country that is gender balanced, a country that is inclusive in its political process and democratic practice, I don't think it's too much.
Because I think that is quite it's innovative, and we're all
yes, and the state houses of assembly. And this act, the way this bill, the way it's proposed, is for a test run period of a particular period of time, and we'll see how it works. If it doesn't work, of course, we can, as a country, we can say, "Oh, this is not working for us," but I know it was going to work, and then we can reverse it. It's not something that is permanent. It's a measure to address the consistent gender imbalance in our legislative processes, in our political processes, that makes it difficult for women to win elective seats in the country. And the reserved seat is in addition to the opportunity for women to also contest normally, with the other seats available. So
I mean, if you ask me, I think it's a very salutary initiative, and I feel we could even go a bit further. This thing has to be part of the election law as well as political party registration law, because I can imagine people with different interests who want to get into office kicking against this, as you have said, that
Yes.
some are saying. So I pray it works. But if it is part of the law, to say for you to be registered as a political party, you need to have in the laws guiding the establishment of every political party a gender, provision. If you go to a country like South Africa, yes, I know they use a proportional representation system, but the ANC in particular has really perfected, that process whereby gender consideration to how the party list is put together. And I think that this is one of the things. So not just making it a National Assembly thing alone, we also need to make it part and parcel of political party registration in Nigeria. Let me take you to what I heard the Minister for Gender, the Minister for Women Affairs. Who said last week that, that she does not support the bill. And then I was asking, is this woman's position is it still tenable that she remains a Minister for Women Affairs if the person who should be the arrowhead of, the passage of this or advocating for these bills will come out and say, oh, I'm not, really I'm not in support of this women quota bill. So are you surprised at that statement from a person of her position and status?
The Honorable Minister for Women Affairs and Social Development might have been quoted out of context, So, but what I know is that the national mechanism for gender in Nigeria is the Federal Ministry of Women Affairs and Social Development. And that ministry has always been in the forefront of ensuring that there is women's inclusion in the political process of the country. So I don't think that having more women at the decision-making positions in our democratic process is something abnormal. And she herself has occupied quite a number of positions. It means that her competency is recognized. So in addition to her, there's also other women who also have competency. And we cannot deny that Nigeria needs to run, with the two wings to ensure that there's a balance of male and female representation in whatever we do. We're talking about security today. It's important that women and men participate more meaningfully in line with the UN Resolution 1325 that also speaks heavily on the involvement of women and their voices in peace-building processes.
I totally agree with you. So let me ask the next question. So if this bill becomes law, and I also want to know what the position of President Tinubu is regarding this bill. I've been seeing some senators come on TV, I think part of a general advocacy campaign on national TV. I think it's highly commendable. But if this bill eventually becomes law, what do you think will be the most profound impact of the bill for Nigerian women? Beyond just putting bodies in the National Assembly. Okay, so how would the increase in the number of women or a fair representation or in the number of women, do you see that contributing or translating to better policy outcomes for the country?
If you ask me, I would say yes. Having more women in decision-making processes, especially where decisions are taken that impacts on the lives of almost half of the population of Nigeria, I would say yes. This is very, very important. And if the bill becomes an act of parliament, what it also means is that Nigeria's status as a country would have risen higher in terms of its ranking of countries that take the participation of women in their decision-making processes very seriously. And I've not seen the president come out to say whether he is for or against, but I believe that based on his own trajectory, in the democratic process of Nigeria, he would definitely recognize the fact that the role of women is very important in any democratic process, and also considering the fact that the current first lady, has been elected as a senator, to serve the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So the fact that women should take part in all of these processes is no longer an underestimated information. It's something that we know would bring about a lot of changes. And I always say that when you take decisions to run a country, it's better to draw from all the perspectives available, so that we keep coming out with excellent decisions that doesn't have a backlash, on us individually and collectively as a country. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So let me now zone in on the work of your organization, Sustainable Gender Action Initiative. How is your organization supporting the work on this bill? What kind of activities is the initiative involved in to promote the bill? And very lastly, on this is how soon do you think the National Assembly will pass the bill and present it for presidential assent?
Okay, so for sustainable gender action, what we've done mostly is to participate in the public hearing at the zonal level. We've also engaged resourceful persons to speak about the importance of the reserve seat bills, to ask for their opinion. We've also issued statements, we've granted media interviews, and we've also participated at different fora where the reserve seats bills are being discussed to make our input and to ensure that the value of the reserve seat bill are made more public. It's not a bill from the space. It's a bill that is being built on, especially from the additional seat bill that was advocated for in the Ninth Assembly, that the Ninth Assembly failed to pass. And I hope that the 10th Assembly will not go the way of the Ninth Assembly. We're already getting worried because the voting was supposed to be last week, but that was postponed. Up to now, there is no clear date yet as I speak with you presently. We're very optimistic that with the commitment that they've shown and the efforts that have been put forward, that the 10th Assembly will not disappoint Nigerians, would not toy with the future of deepening the democratic process in Nigeria, and will add their value in all its might to ensuring that Nigeria moves to the next level of truly having a democracy that is representational and that is inclusive. So I hope the time is actually now, for the voting to take place and for them to vote for that bill to become a law. So we're all looking and watching and remain hopeful.
Yeah, and we will not just look and watch. We will continue to, apply the pressure, pound on the doors of the National Assembly. There's just no excuse for Nigeria to have a parliament where out of 400 and something members, you have perhaps less than 20, women. It's untenable, it's unjustifiable, unconscionable also. Yeah. So lastly, Dr. Fijabi, given everything, that we've discussed here today, what would you say should be the single most important action for every Nigerian citizen? And in this case, male or female, young or old, you can take for what, as part of this show of elimination of discrimination and violence against women. What should be the one single action that we can take as Nigerians, irrespective of gender and age, to make sure it comes to an end? Because we see stories, we see things that really touches the heart when you see relationships between husband and wife, partners and so on, go south, and in most instances, uh, women suffer a lot. Young girls suffer a lot, fatalities and so on. So, what should be the one most important action that everyday Nigerians should take?
Okay, so what I would like to say is that every Nigerian person should recognize the dignity of the human person in everybody. If you see a human being, recognize them as human, admit and acknowledge that they have their own capacity, and then most importantly, also they should have respect for the diversity of every human race. We are not all created the same, but we are equal in our entitlement as human beings. So that respect for the dignity of the human person is critical. Once that is there, there will be no discussions about violence, there will be no perpetrator, there will be no victim, there will be no survivor. We'll all live in our safe spaces and be able to enjoy that fundamental human right.
Yeah. Fijami, for spending time with us today and helping us to throw light on the issues that we have discussed today, particularly how insecurity impacts, seriously on women and the girl child in different across the country. We appreciate you, and we also thank you for the work that you and your colleagues are doing out there. And we hope that next time we invite you, you will honor our invitation.
Sure, I will. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to. It's
Thank you.
well appreciated.
Thank you so much. It's been quite an interesting conversation. As Nigeria confronts its numerous development and security challenges, women, including the girl child, are carrying a huge cost, but denied the power to shape its solutions. If Nigeria is serious about stability, peace, and development, it must, as a matter of fact, do the following things. We must put women at the center of our national development strategy. Because if you develop a woman, you develop a nation. Number two, it is important that the National Assembly pass the Women Quota Bill. And when it is presented to the president, we hope it will act true to type. As someone who has always supported women and gender initiatives, that it will sign the bill into law. The third thing is that Nigeria and Nigerians must treat gender equality as a national security imperative. Because a nation that excludes half of its population from decision making cannot defeat the crisis threatening its future. Thank you once again for listening and for watching this episode. Please, if you have not subscribed to this channel, we encourage you to do so. Join us as we attempt to have our first 500 subscribers before the end of the month of December. Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and stay courageous. Merry Christmas all.